How the heck are you guys? Let's talk about VORNGATE, aka the Vorn nerf, aka the Vorn apocalypse, whatever you want to call it. I'm Fastidious. Welcome to the channel. And some really bad stuff has happened with Vorn. There's really no other way to put it. I think my take may be a little bit different than some other people's. In some ways, I don't think it's as bad as many people are saying. And in some ways, I think it's a lot worse than what people are saying. I think there's a bigger issue here at the core of what happened with Vorn that needs to be discussed. And I feel like people are focusing on the one thing with Vorn when this is like a symptom of a much bigger disease that has infected the game for a long time now, quite frankly. Let's get into it so you guys know what I'm talking about. I do want to say I am on the road right now visiting some friends in Austin, Texas. So shout out to any Texans watching. And I also mentioned that to say I've got my travel mic, I've got my travel set up, so hopefully the quality is great. But if it's a little less than you desire, please give me a little grace. Let's talk about Vorn, baby. So if you do not know, Vorn's passive and his A1 and his A3 were, in a way, nerfed. I think nerf is a harder term than I would like to use because this nerf would not affect 99.8% of use cases. It also was not a skill change. The skill was never working correctly. They just changed the verbiage to match the skill. That change, I think, is so much a million times worse, the reason for that change, than the fact that they made the change to begin with. And we're going to unpack that a lot in this video. But undeniably, the fact that they essentially did, let's call it a big switcheroo the day of the global launch, is a big sloppy mess. And it's insulting to players. And frankly, it's insulting to a lot of people's wallets. And the way they've kind of dismissed it and pushed it to the side is very concerning to me. So let's talk about what happened. Let's actually start with Vorn, then I'll go to the message and the incredible 100 diamonds compensation they sent to all players. But let's start with Vorn, and you can see over here he's got this passive, Mind of Hatred. Increases damage dealt to shielded targets by 30%. That's his damage. With skill ups, that goes to 50%. But then this is the key thing here. Applies Shield Break. Shield Break is a brand new buff in the game, a buff they heavily advertised. They were like, here comes Vorn. He's really good, and he's bringing a brand new buff, Shield Break. And what does it do? It increases damage dealt to shielded targets by 30%. So this is what the buff does. And like, wow, okay, he's going to give a buff that's going to let your allies increase their damage to shields. We need to take down those Abyss 1 shields. We got to get this guy and get that good buff. And then it says, will be applied to the 2 allied fighter units with the highest attack on the battlefield. So one really cool thing there, it's not in his range. I talked about this in my Vorn guide. It's on the battlefield. However, they specify 2 allied fighter units. So if you go back and watch my original Vorn showcase before it launched on global, it already said this on my test server. However, if you had watched earlier versions of other content creators who did guides and showcases early in the week, it did not say allied fighters. It just said the 2 allied units with the highest attack on the battlefield. Moreover, and to me, this is the biggest thing that Moonton's pretending didn't happen, the whole week in events, they were teasing and promoting and informing us in a really great way that Vorn and Helga were coming. So if you clicked here, you'd be able to see their avatars, and you could click on Vorn, and you could read his kit. And up until the banner launching, this was reading 2 allied units, not 2 allied fighter units. It was the 2 allied units with the highest attack. So, you could say, well, that was a creator on the test server. You should have watched the Fastidious video. How could they know I was going to release a later video with the right information? I didn't even know I had the right information. I just covered what was on the test server. What the devs could have counted on is people checking him in-game in the preview gallery, which I know a lot of people did, and they were feeding us false information. Whether it was an honest mistake, whether it wasn't, I do think it was an honest mistake. At the end of the day, they are culpable. They misportrayed what this skill would do. If we go to Awakenings now, you can see here is Awaken 1. Now, instead of applying Shield Break to the 2 allied units, it's the 3 allied units with the highest attack. However, here's the change, fighter units. Originally, if you went into this preview screen leading up to the banner all week, and even after reset, which I'm going to show you, I have evidence of that, after global reset, when the banner went live, early wee hours of Friday morning or, normal Friday morning, depending on where you live, it was still saying allied units, the allied units, not fighter units. There was none of this specificity. And frankly, the reason I don't think it's the hugest deal for this one specific circumstance is the vast, vast majority of players with the vast majority of use cases will always have the 3 allied units with the highest attack be fighter units. Fighter units just have much, much higher base attack. However, I do think this skill and these conditions were exceedingly attractive to people that wanted that flexibility. People were theory crafting very clever things where they could manipulate different units' attacks for different kind of solutions to make sure maybe this mage got the highest attack, right? And you could do cool stuff there. Or maybe you were going to use him in GVG and you only had one fighter, so then it was going to go on someone else. Someone else would have the second highest attack. So that's all out the window now, right? Finally, with the A3, this was the last of the changes of the edits. You can see the second line of text here. The number of targets affected by Awakened 1 increases by 1. So now it's the 4 allied fighter units. And at that point, how much boss content are we bringing 4 fighters? There's scenarios for sure, but it's just the whole thing's changed in a pretty crazy way. So I do have evidence that I do want to show you guys that after global reset, when the banner went live, for many players, it was still saying the allied units with the highest attack, not the allied fighter units. So we have to unpack that. But let's talk about their explanation and their comp and the whole debacle, because a debacle it is indeed. And then I'm going to talk about what I think they should do and what I think they need to work on aggressively in the future. So you can see here, we sincerely apologize for any inconvenience caused by the changes in Vorn's skill description. Please find your compensation attached. Thank you for your continued support and understanding. Yay! 100 diamonds. Some people going for A1 Vorn pulled another 1,000 times. I know of whales that did that, right? From the top celestial guilds, mad guilds, and their compensation is 100 diamonds. They were going for a skill that didn't exist. That the devs really should think about maybe bringing back. Let's go to their larger explanation here in the system notice regarding issues with Vorn's skill description. So this is the big thing there. Their whole angle is there was no issue with the skill. It was always working that way. It was we described it wrong. It was always going to the fighter units, and we described it wrong. So here's the little intro, blah, blah, blah. They're talking about the passive Mind of Hatred and the awakenings that go along with it. And these are the lists of the adjustments they made before hero release. And this is the big problem as well. It was not before hero release. Even if they made the adjustments, I have evidence I'm going to show you guys with timestamps that it was still showing on global server for many players, the original version, the allied units with the highest attack, not the allied fighter units. So number one, we optimize the skill effect of Mind of Hatred to make it easier to understand and more precise in supporting physical DPS heroes. So what they're saying is it was always working like this. We just made it more precise in the description. We apologize for making it sound vague when it was always a very targeted thing just for allied fighter units, right? Then number two, to maximize Vorn's shield break effectiveness, we enhanced his A3 effect, Mind of Hatred, gains one additional buff target. So here they're leaving it vague, and they're saying, this makes it sound like maybe that fourth target doesn't have to be a fighter. It all sounds vague. And then you can see after the hero's release, we discovered an issue with the skill description implementation, which caused players to see a different skill description than what was initially shown. So now they're saying after, and now they're actually, coming up and admitting what the problem was. People opened the banner that day and it was live and it was still reading the incorrect thing. So let me show you that now. And frankly, it's false advertising, whether they think it's a big deal or not. Like I said, I don't think it's the biggest deal in this situation. I'll talk about the couple use cases where it could be a big deal, but I just think the big problem in the way they're handling it is a very, very big deal because this clearly was just untested bullshit. Like, let's not call it something it isn't. So these are messages from Ron. He used to be one of the top players in MAD. I believe he's currently in Celestials, and he was sharing this. This is someone that he knows from the global server in his clan. And you can see that here. This is a screenshot from someone on global server, Mind of Hatred. Increases damage dealt to shielded targets by 50%. That's Vorn damage. And remember, this is at full skill ups. And then applies shield break to 2 allied units. Not the 2 allied fighter units, just 2 allied units with the highest attack on the battlefield. I said any timestamp with the file, and he did a great job providing that. This is also the A1. You can see shield break to 3 allied units, not fighter units, allied units with the highest attack. And then he said, I'll ask, and he found it. Look at that. This is it, and here's the screenshot. And you can see this is Eastern time in America, right? ET, 10:44 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, 10:44 a.m., day of the banner. What more is there really to say? Reset Eastern Time is at 4 a.m. So this was 6 hours and 44 minutes after reset. That is very bad. Time zone, U.S. player, and then Eastern Time. If we continue, I can go over here. What I'm going to show you now is provided by a Brazilian player, so this is going to be in Portuguese. I don't know if they had other skill description issues in other languages, but if you play the game in Spanish or German or Russian or Ukrainian or Chinese or something, Tagalog, let me know, because I'm curious if it was messed up in every language. But you're going to see he starts off talking about the weirdness in the description. Then I asked for evidence. Or actually, he went ahead and just shared it. And here you go, no. He goes, just to note, this wasn't changed before it came to global. This was after global. This is in Portuguese. And you can see. I'll try to read it for you, but it's aplica, quebrar, escudo. So that's the shield break effect. I don't know how you say it. Duo, dos. I don't know. I speak Spanish, not Portuguese. So it's two, dos, duo, whatever Portuguese. I apologize. Unidades aliadas. Allied units. Como the major attack, the highest attack on the battlefield, right? So it's not saying the fighter units, it just says the allied units, the unidades aliadas. Okay, my apologies for the Portuguese. And then I asked for a timestamp, and then he provided. So I can scroll down here, and you will see. So this is UTC +3. So this is 1 hour ahead of Eastern time, of New York time, which was the last one. This is GMT -3 Brasilia. And you can see this was at 11:16 a.m. So what is that? Reset in Brazil is 5 a.m. So this was 6 hours and 16 minutes after reset. And it was still showing like that. That is a huge problem. So let me talk about those use cases, why this is a problem for the people that pursued this, and then let's talk more globally why it's a problem that they're acting like this isn't a big deal when it's clearly a really big deal, I think, and this needs to be addressed, and frankly, it needs to be fixed, and most importantly, fixed and handled better in such a big way moving forward. So with the Mind of Hatred, you're thinking, and this is what I'm thinking, it's like you're going to use it in Abyss, right? That's the only content right now where we really want to destroy shields for most players, and you're going to want it to be on your fighters anyway. You're going to want it to go on your Numera or your Kagiri or your Sun Wukong, and then they're going to take down the shield faster, especially with the two allied fighter units. There's no other real workaround there. However, that's if you have a full roster and you have these optimal fighters. Imagine it's someone with a younger account and they just had like an amazing Nastia or an amazing Ingrid or something they wanted to use in the fight, some mage who already has really high base attack closer to a fighter. This wouldn't be possible, frankly, with like a Hex, unless you started going like triple crit damage on your fighters to suppress their attack. But let's say they had a Nastia or an Ingrid, something like that, a Praetus that they wanted to use. It's an earlier account. They don't have like the pickings of anyone in the game with this amazing full roster. They might be like, yeah, I'll put a crit damage piece on my Salazar. He's not that great in this fight. I want this buff to land on Praetus. That's a real life application that they might have been pulling for, and they really could have calculated would move the needle for them. And then it's out the window. The rugs, it's like a rug pull, right? Like it's like a, hey, invest all your in-game resources, invest your money on this feature, and then it's gone. Like not everyone was like that. I'd say the vast majority of players who are calling this a nerf are complaining about something that never would have nerfed them. But for certain players, it's nerfing them. And then the big thing is the A1. I mean, this could affect players. There could totally be circumstances where you had your two best fighters built up, but then your third, you made your Nastia, you made your Ingrid, you made your Praetus, you made your Lyra somehow. You manipulated attacks to get that key mage unit to be your third highest attack and also get this shield break buff. That's for sure. And I know this is something Krakens and whales were hunting for. They're like, yeah, okay, it's going to go on Wukong, it's going to go on Kagiri, but then that third one could go on my Nastia. Or I can manipulate it. I've got good enough gear. I could get my Ingrid high enough. I could get my Nastia high enough. I could maybe even get my Hex high enough. It depends on the account and what they're trying to accomplish. But this is something people were pursuing, and because it's an awakening, we're pulling a lot extra for. This is not 100 diamonds kind of thing. Also, I want to say, I don't think everyone needs to be compensated. Sorry if that's a hot take. I think it'd be cool if everyone was compensated more than 100 diamonds, because I just think they really undermined our trust here and played around with us. That will be the final concluding section of this video. But the people that, I mean, they can see it. The people that pulled 1,000 times after getting a Vorn, the first copy, because they wanted the A1 for this reason, or pulled 500 times or even 300 times. I mean, went crazy afterwards. I mean, come on, those people are screwed over. Even if they pulled for 2 more legendaries after that first Vorn, clearly, I think most people would have stopped and not pursued this. Not all people, but most people. The final use case, and this is specific, but Ma, the Demon Soldier Captain, not Ma the character, but Ma, the Demon Soldier version from GVG, he puts up huge shields. And I know a lot of top GVGers wanted to hunt for that A1 to be able to shred Ma shields faster so people couldn't break their defenses with Ma. People wanted to experiment with this, and people were pursuing the A1 for this. You're not going to have more than 2 fighters ever on the field in GVG. Frankly, a lot of times you'll just have 1. It depends on the comp you're running. So they were counting on the normal passive was going to be applied to, whatever fighter they're using, and then someone. And then certainly those hunting the A1, and they were thinking, I'm going to have Vorn, who naturally gets the penetration. I'm going to have my healer, and then my other 3 units are all going to get shield break. and that's out the window, right? Unless the other 3 units were all fighters. And spoiler alert, they never would be. So people got screwed by this. But to conclude, the big issue is, frankly, the devs released an untested product. They're saying it was always working like this. It was always going to these high physical damage DPS units, these fighter units. That's just how it was coded, whether they meant it that way or not. But the description was broad. And they didn't think it was a problem. And then they realized, oh my God, it's actually only working this way. Let's change the description instead of changing how the move was actually coded, right? The actual functionality of the passive. And that's the problem. I mean, they decided they found out it wasn't working as intended, so they changed the description at the last minute, and frankly, after the last minute for a lot of players, because it was still showing like that on global. They changed it to match the defective version and just make it congruent with that, make it in line with that, as opposed to, all right, maybe we released this guy too early. Let's go back and let's make sure it's working properly. And then to take it one step further, that's something they should have done 2 weeks ago or a month ago or 2 months ago. I mean, I don't know their rollout plan. Obviously, the characters come out really fast, but this should not be getting discovered the wee hours as the banner's launching, after the banner's launching, right? And I think that is the big issue here. You know, like I said, I think for 99% of players, you'll never feel this nerf. It will never touch you. A couple of you, it absolutely will. And a couple of you got screwed out of a ton of summons because of that, and that sucks. But the biggest thing here is the devs undermining our trust. They're packaging products over and over and over that are bugged, and either they don't think we notice, or when we do notice, they just change things and move things around to accommodate the bug as opposed to solving the bug and making it work as originally intended. And it's hard, I think, for a lot of people to stand by a game that continues to do that. So moving forward, I just wish there was a lot more ownership of that. I wish it was a bit more thoughtful in testing. And I've said this a million times. You have a bunch of creators on the test server now, and they have like their little team of testers through Discord. Give us more pointed instructions on what they would like us to test, and test we will, right? We will happily go and test all those stuff if they say, hey, we want to make sure this is working right. But typically, always, the way it works is, hey, new heroes, Numera, Nastia, Vixera, and Vorn are coming. Can you test them? Make some content on them. It's never, we're wondering about how Nastia works for this, or we have a question about Vorn's passive. If they could do that, they could leverage all these free workers, essentially, to do this stuff for them weeks before. But instead, we have these characters released pretty dang close to when the summoning banners are, and then this messy stuff happens. So at the end of the day, I think everyone needs a bit more compensation because I think we were deceived. And if I was the devs, I would look into tracking down who pulled the Vorn and then went for A1 and pulled more than, let's even say more than 100 more times, more than one legendary more, and compensate those people, give them their diamonds back for what they summoned. That's what I would do, honestly. So that is my breakdown of the Vorn nerf, VORNGATE, the Vornpocalypse. I hope you appreciated it. It's kind of a complicated thing, but at its crux, it isn't. Stop releasing bugged units, play test your units before you release them, and if a mistake happens, don't pretend it's a smaller mistake than it is, because something like this is pretty sloppy. And frankly, I think it offends a lot of the player base. I think a lot of the player base is just pissed off in general because of how unreliable the banners have been feeling. And then something like this happens, and it's going to make it harder and harder and harder for more people to stand by the game. I will continue to stand by the game, but I definitely have these issues in my sights, as I think a lot of people do. And I really encourage people that we continue to hold the devs accountable. I know a lot of people like to say, like, oh my God, whine, like you're so hard on them. This game's so good. This game can still be so good. It is so good, in my opinion. That doesn't mean we should just give leniency when F-ups happen. Because an F-up stands for a fuck-up, and we don't like fuck-ups. Thank you guys so much for watching. I have been Fastidious. If you like my stuff, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Please let me know all your thoughts in the comment section below. Share with your mother, and I'll see you real soon. Bye.
Fastidious.